Process flow diagrams, where you sketch out the steps of activity within a business, are critical to diagnosing that business's operation strategy. That's the key to this particular scenario. Let's take a look. Two different companies produce and sell a certain product to customers. All right, so we're looking at two different businesses. Each of the two companies starts with the same raw materials and creates the product through 3 stages of processing. But each of the two companies uses a different strategy, and that's what we're going to have to diagnose, to create the product shown in the process flow diagrams of each company's operations below. In each diagram, triangles, now this is typical of all process flow diagrams, triangles represent inventory stocks while squares represent processing or action. Okay, so that means that what you're looking at is a simplified portrait of two companies. In this first company, what I'm highlighting here is that whatever they're making, they start with a stock of something, presumably raw materials. This is action. They do something to it, then they do something else to it to create another stock. They're storing up. This would be work in process. And the reason that I'm saying that is because I noticed that then they do something else and give it to the customer. Oh, all right, as opposed to, you say, yeah, okay, fine. This company B is making the same product. One assumes that they are starting with the same raw materials. You know, we say this same stock. They do something to those raw materials, then they do something else. Now notice they do something else, then they stop. Here's where they're accumulating stock. Oh, and there's an important distinction here. In the case of company B, the second one, notice that that's connected to the customer. What that means is that the customer is being served out of stock. Oh, which diagnosis, company B, the second one, dead giveaway, this is a make to stock operation. Okay, this is how they're providing the product. They're just making up a lot of it, and then the customers are helping themselves to what it is that they have already made. Now, as opposed to, wait a minute, let's look at company A. They are making up a lot of something, but they're not letting the customer have it. Just before the customer retrieves it, they're doing that one last action, whatever it is. Why would you be doing that rationally? Why are you waiting around to do one last thing before you give it to the customer? You are apparently, rationally, pursuing an assemble to order strategy. Common abbreviation, ATO. Right. Rationally, why would you be doing that? This particular pattern in process flow diagram is common to firms that are trying to provide a little bit of variation for the customer. So the customer arrives, expresses what they want, and they save that one last step for the customer. Okay, fine. Now, none of this, we haven't even touched the questions yet, right? In this scenario, let's look at the questions. From which company is purchasing the product likely to be less expensive? That's why we needed to do the diagnosis first, because now we know, well, company B, rationally, that's pursuing a make to stock strategy, and company A, apparently an assemble to order strategy, because they're saving that one last step to just before the individual customer gets there. Less expensive, make to stock. When this is a generality comparing the two strategies, we expect that make to stock, why would you do that? Why would you just make a whole bunch of something and then wait and see if anybody wants it? Because this is generally, loosely speaking, the less expensive or least expensive way to produce something. Now, next question. From which company is the customer likely to wait longer before receiving the product? Oh, also known as lead time. Which are, and another way to phrase that question then, is which of these two strategies would have a longer lead time associated with it? All right, well, here the customer arrives, and hopefully this is what they want. They just grab it straight from stock. Here the customer arrives, makes a request, something's done, and then they're, okay, company A. or assemble to order would have the longer lead times because, and we want to note that that's the answer, company A, because another virtue of make to stock, and we're talking about theoretically, is that it should have the shortest of all possible lead times because you just make stuff up and then it's ready for people, ready to go out the door. Where's the wait? Now, what's the next question? Which company appears to be practicing, good concept, so-called delayed differentiation? That would be company A. That is exactly what's going on here. Delayed differentiation. Because this business about do most of the work, let's look at the diagram. Do most of the work on a fairly standardized product, but apparently leave one step out until just before a particular customer gets there and makes a particular request. Another term for this strategy is delayed differentiation, because we expect that as the customers come in the door, there's going to be some important aspect of the product that varies between the customers. For instance, just as an example, voltage, right? Power supply. Some customers placing orders, right, are going to want to order consumer electronics that run on 110 voltage, like in North America. And other customers are going to be placing orders for their stores, and they sell to customers who require 220 or 230 voltage. All right, so we make the consumer electronics, but we leave out the power supply. And then when the order is placed, we drop in the power supply. That's known as delayed differentiation. Okay, now, last question. Which company has adopted, that is a make-to-stock process for production? We had to make that call before we answered the other questions, so we just note here that, yes, for a fact, that is, the stock is connected to the customer. That's company B.